Now it's time to regulate, because apparently Congress won't. Do you know what's on the agenda? First thing on the agenda in Congress, if they can finally get back out of the government shutdown, it's to deregulate the banks even more, to let them do even more risky derivative trading. That seems crazy, right? No, it's not. It's back to business. That's part of the reason the Chamber of Commerce and Wall Street CEOs met with President Obama today and agreed to pressure the Republicans because they've got some goodies lined up. So, Huffington Post explains that the Dodd-Frank banned companies, this was the bill originally, and it was pretty weak to begin with, but at least it had this provision. It banned companies that sell some types of derivatives from receiving government perks like cheap loans from the Federal Reserve or deposit insurance from the FDIC. Okay? So that's good. We're happy that they did that. Right? Who's not happy about it? The banks and Congress. So the House Agriculture Committee, they explain, approved legislation in March to repeal Dodd-Frank's limits on taxpayer support for derivatives by a vote of 31 to 14, and the bill passed House Financial Services Committee 2 months later by a margin of 53 to 6. Now pause and let me explain this. They're saying, look, if you're going to do derivatives trading, which is incredibly risky, it's the riskiest trading you could do, at least don't do it with taxpayer money. That was one of the small provisions that was actually positive in Dodd-Frank. Now they're saying, oh, no, we got to repeal that. They voted 53 to 6. It's not like the Democrats don't agree. The Democrats agree. Yes, the 6 that voted against it were Democrats. But most of the Democrats said, yeah, give favors to the banks. We'd love to do that. So they can't wait to get back in there to let them gamble with our money, with our deposits. Huffington Post explains that there's a second provision as well that would also screw us. Great. On the post-shutdown agenda is legislation that would prevent Department of Labor and the SEC from implementing new consumer protection standards for 401k accounts and other retirement funds. Do you understand that? They're going to take away any kind of security we would have, peace of mind we would have on our 401k accounts that we know what the hell's in it. So, oh no, you don't have to know, okay, just trust the banks. And the banks don't have to tell you if they're dealing against your interests and in favor of their interests. In fact, Congressman Keith Ellison explains. He says, if you're going to be giving people what everyone would understand to be retirement advice, you have to do it in that person's best interest. You can't do it in your best interest, pushing products that you're going to profit from without telling your client. But of course they can. How do they do that? They just do legalized bribery and they just pay Congress off. They get votes at the Financial Committee of 53 to 6. By the way, the Financial Services Committee, the committee that gets the most amount of donations. That's why all the congressmen want to be on there, so they can take more bribes than the other congressmen, so they can turn around and say, oh, you want to, take the 401k money and use it for the bank's best interest and not for the recipients? Have at it, Hoss, take it, who cares? And then you want to take the depositors' money and you want to, which is backed up by the taxpayers, and you want to gamble with it? Of course, go ahead. Alan Grayson had my favorite line in all of this. He said, why don't we just save ourselves some time and hand Goldman Sachs $1 trillion? Now, that's funny and somewhat true. To be fair, actually, this is the one thing that Goldman Sachs is a little bit better than the other banks on. Goldman Sachs does not use the taxpayer bank, part of their bank to do their derivatives trading. So credit to Goldman Sachs on that. But the other large banks do, and there's no reason why they should be allowed to do that. If I wanted to gamble with my own money, I know how to do it. I don't need the bankers to do it with my money. And now if you're a conservative, you should hate this provision. You should hate this vote. Progressives and conservatives should be united on this. But of course, doesn't matter if we're united because our representatives don't represent us. They represent the banks. And finally, to give you a sense of the scale of the problem of derivatives that I'm talking about, Warren Buffett in the past had called them, quote, time bombs. And then my favorite of all time, he called them, quote, financial weapons of mass destruction. And this is what we're enabling. This is what, if government ever comes back, which it should pretty soon, what it's going to do is create an opportunity for more financial weapons of mass destruction and do it with our money. Great. By the way, to give you a sense of how big the derivatives are and why I'm always so concerned about them, the world's annual GDP, that's the gross domestic product of the entire planet, is about 50 to 60 billion, trillion dollars, 50 to 60 trillion dollars. Now, how large is the derivatives market? $1.2 quadrillion. That's the first time I've seen the number quadrillion. That is 1,000 trillions. That's how large the notional value of the derivatives market is. They say, well, that's notional value. That's not really what's at risk. What's at risk is probably in the ballpark of 1 to 10%. So only what? $120 trillion, or at best case scenario, $12 trillion, which would be 20% of the world economy. And a worst case scenario of 10%, and that's not the worst case scenario, by the way, this is if you take the bankers' words for it, twice the value of the entire planet is at risk. You make a little error, oops, did we blow up the whole world with financial weapons of mass destruction? Look, the derivatives market in total is worth 20 times the size of the world economy. And if the government gets back in, the first thing on their docket is to allow the bankers to gamble more with that money. It's a disaster waiting to happen.